Joined now by our illustrious general manager, Mr. Andrew Berry, joining us. Good to see you, buddy. We're back here at the Combine. It seems like we blink and we're here. When you think about this year specifically, though, new coaching staff, obviously, and although some holdovers certainly, but what is this week like for you guys in terms of getting everybody together and getting everybody on the same page for this massive offseason?
Well, I'll be honest, it doesn't change a whole lot. Maybe the weeks preceding probably have the bigger adjustment because you're really in hiring season. You're trying to, work with head coach to hire the assistants and still getting everything organized for Indianapolis. But once we get here, it's back into the normal routine of football. You're meeting the upcoming draft prospects. You're meeting with the representatives of your own players, and going through the glorious week that is Indianapolis.
We talked last week a little bit about this. This week is obviously about understanding, learning a lot about the players, seeing them on the grass, but medicals really to make sure everything jives with what you've seen on tape. But you talked about free agency and trades. That's probably the bulk of your work here. Kind of just walk us through what that actually is like to be the general manager in a week in Indianapolis with all the meetings and conversations and whispers and, hey, I'm going to feel you out on this. Let me throw this out there, see if you take the bait type stuff.
Yeah, I'd say really most of the week is draft focused. You do have a number of you may have trade discussions during the week, but really most of the discussions with agents and that type of thing is with your own players.
Interesting.
AB, in terms of the way that you guys go, like when your guys are out, you've scouted a full season, the tape's the tape, they have their impressions, you come here, you do the medicals, there's going to be some meetings that take place, obviously, but fewer and fewer of these guys are doing all of this stuff. How do you're going to have the in-house visits, you're going to have pro days, all of that stuff. How do you kind of balance importance of all of those things as you're putting together this puzzle?
Yeah, well, the important part, the overwhelming majority is really what they do in the fall and the conversations that you have with individuals that have been with them their entire college careers. The rest of the spring, it's a lot and it's the most recent, but it's really weighted the less because you're really trying to answer maybe selective gaps coming out of the fall scouting season. Obviously, the medical's a big part, as Nathan mentioned. You want to maybe dig in terms of their football foundation because you have a chance to have them meet with your staff and other people. But it's probably maybe a little bit more about making adjustments on the margins than maybe driving the meat of the evaluation.
If I was prospect X and you said, hey, you make the cut, we want to talk to you while I'm at the Combine, what's kind of big picture without getting specific trade secrets? I walk into this room. What happens?
Yeah, so we really try and create a relaxed environment for the prospect because it's a busy week where they're poked and prodded medically, they're running, they're jumping, they're taking psychological tests, they're taking cognitive tests, and they're meeting with, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 clubs from 8 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. at night. And so
this is grueling for these guys.
Yeah, it's very grueling. So what we try and do is we try and create an environment that's a little bit more like a classroom position meeting environment.
Okay.
And essentially take them through a combination of installation, like a small installation, and then walking through their own film to understand, how much of their own system that they know. So it's really focused on football and football knowledge. We don't necessarily use it so much for the other stuff because there are better means, and we usually have a pretty good picture of who the person is coming into it. So we really try and use it to dig on their football acumen.
Is it kind of a fun exercise set aside? Because you get how many meetings?
45.
To kind of to get the guy. Get to your list of 45.
Well, I can tell you this, Nathan, 45 is plenty of slots.
so full day. So maybe it's harder to get to 45 than you would think. You're like, all right, we got these 15 that we like for sure.
I think that's probably accurate.
I love that.
No names, but are there guys who you had the tape told you one thing, and then you get in a conversation with them, you're like, wow, that's a non-negotiable, that's an undraftable. Have you have those type of situations that happen, or is that pretty rare?
No, not usually. Usually you try and eliminate, or at least we take the approach where we try and eliminate that on the front end.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there aren't prospects that it's like, okay, this may be on the border, this may be on the fringe, and we need to dig and investigate a particular part of their background a little bit further. And there are some of those situations, but it's usually not driven from a 20-minute conversation. Again, that could be a 20-minute conversation after the individual's had a really long physical, done a bunch of testing, had 7 interviews, and it starts at 10:40 at night.
Yeah, it's a tough spot.
When you bring in a new head coach and who is going to be calling the plays on offense, we have a new wide receivers coach who is in the building but obviously switched positions, and we bring in George Warhop now at offensive line. How's that integration work between them and you? Because you've been kind of scouting for a similar scheme for quite some time to say, okay, here's how we're going to kind of look at these positions now.
Yeah, I'd say it's particularly on offense, it's probably a little bit less specific than maybe the defensive side of the ball. There may be some small priorities on the margin in terms of what they may ask a particular position to do, but it actually really isn't. Maybe you see it a little bit more in the offensive line, right? If you're a wide zone team,
sure,
you're gonna prioritize athletic linemen that can run and get off the spot. Whereas if you're a gap scheme offense, you're gonna have size, power, strength. But really, for like the skill positions, I wouldn't say that there's usually too big of an adjustment.
Do you like when you have a coach who's like, at the end of the day, I just want the best player?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that drew us to Todd, just like his flexibility, his ability to accommodate a number of different skill sets, because ultimately it broadens the player pool for you to find different avenues to improve the team.
What has it been like? I mean, you worked with Kevin for so long, and there was this group, the two of you guys, and now new coach in the mix, and Todd, and he's got all the energy. He's been waiting for this for a long time, obviously. What's it been like for you?
Todd's been great. I think I've been very fortunate, very blessed to work with two A-plus individuals. And I think the other thing, I was reflecting on this the other day, is both have like fantastic senses of humor, which always makes it easier to work with someone who doesn't take himself too seriously, and different styles of humor.
Quite different.
But it's been great to work with Monk. Yeah. He's really smart. He's really driven. He's very authentic. So it's been a good first month.
Yeah.
What's it been like to have 2 first-round picks? You're coming here with 3 in the top 39 and 2 in the first round, and we went, quite some time without a first-round pick.
Yeah.
How has that been kind of as you look, and I know you've done such a good job moving around draft boards, and now you've got more ammunition than ever. Has that kind of been fun when you're going through all your exercises to get ready?
Yeah, it has been. It has been. I think the ability to have access to a group of players that you normally wouldn't be able to acquire, it is exciting as you think about building the roster, especially you think about this year and last year and contrast that to the past 3. It's a different challenge.
It's like trying to play chess and being like, well, this time I can actually entertain playing with a queen as opposed to no looking at the queens this time.
Yeah, I think I almost put it as like, imagine you're fishing in a pond and one has like 3 trout per square meter, and then you fish in another pond and it has like 3 trout per 100 square meter.
Yeah,
it's like
per pond.
Yeah, right, yeah. There you go. So it certainly makes it more exciting.
Andrew, you had such an incredible draft last year. When you look back on it, what were there certain things that you could take from last year's process into this one in terms of, boy, we had this nailed, because it felt like, man, that was an incredible draft last year?
Well, I think a big part of it is like where your team is, and then the resource management piece is enormous. I think that's one of the biggest levers that we can pull. Like taking kind of the pond analogy, for instance, like if you're fishing in the pond with more fish, you're going to catch more. It's as simple as that. Where if you're fishing the pond that's very sparse, it's going to be tougher, and that's why when we think about like accumulating draft capital or trading down, why we think it's a fruitful exercise. For us to have really our first 4 picks, I think would have been higher than our first pick in all but one of the past 3 drafts.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. And it also maybe changes like whether you're risk averse or risk seeking within that slot. But the other piece of it is really probably less constrained in terms of where we needed to go on the roster or where we need to invest on the roster, because we were a team in transition. Obviously there will be a little bit more focus in certain position groups as we go into this draft. Not to say that you're going to just draft because of need, because we don't believe in doing that. But we do think of it in terms of impact, and that maybe creates a little bit of a strategy depending on what we do with the veteran market this spring.
Yeah, 10 picks. Not only does it give you the ability to make movement there, it also those could turn into veteran players, which you've done a very good job with. So there is a lot of arsenal that you can pull from. When you think about your first draft to now, What's kind of been the biggest change in maybe, I'll say, you as a general manager, and also the trends of the league? Because it's crazy when you look back at kind of how some drafts fell, even as recently as 2020 to today. You can tell the shifts in the trends in the league.
Yeah, I think number one, patience. Nathan, and like understanding that good players come from all segments of the draft. I think in terms of the trends with the league, I do think that you've seen a shift over the past 6 years in terms of when certain positions come off the board, how quickly some of the premium positions come off the board, some positions that are becoming more premium to the league, relative to where it was 6 or 7 years ago. To me, those are probably the biggest changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think about what Seattle did this year, and obviously there's some copycat nature to the league, but to get a guy who, journeyman quarterback, been around, hit in Minnesota, great defense, big-time weapon in Jackson Smith and Jigba, really good up front, and they ride it all the way to the Super Bowl. And forever, it was like, if you don't get a franchise, if you get Tom Brady, you got no chance. You get Mahomes, you got no chance. It almost gives – there's another avenue here. And are you hearing that, and is it something that you take notice of in terms of team building?
Yeah, I'd say number one, we're still very much in a quarterback-driven league.
Yep.
I think if you look at the teams, you could look at maybe even Philadelphia the year before. You look at Detroit's build, even Seattle. Usually the teams that do that, I think they end up having a cycle where they have surplus assets, right? Where Seattle, they trade Russell Wilson, they get a bunch of first round picks. Philadelphia, they do a big trade down and they trade Carson Wentz. They get a bunch of picks. Detroit, they trade Matthew Stafford.
Yep.
Yeah.
That really kind of launches their rebuild. And I think fortunately we're in a position with the trade from last year where we do have like a pretty strong arsenal that hopefully, as it compounds over time, will pay dividends here in the short medium term.
Get you out of here on this one. For Browns fans who are watching this and obviously eager to hear your thoughts on everything, free agency comes up, then we've got the draft. What can they expect, or what should they be looking for here in these next days? Jimmy Haslam said, the 120 days as we're rolling along, and that. What should Browns fans be looking for from your side of things and from this football team as we build this roster here over the next 2 months?
Yeah, I think that we've always prided ourselves in being opportunistic and taking advantage of whatever avenues would allow us to improve the team, whether it's trade, whether it's a veteran addition, a cap cut. And then certainly, the draft and how we move around the draft. I mentioned at the end of the year, I would expect this to be more of an offensively focused offseason because that's where we need the most help. But probably the biggest thing is we're going to try and do everything in our power to generate resources and then to apply them in the most impactful areas. So. I guess maybe flexibility. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. All right, good. That's a hook. Cliffhanger. He gets the business. That's
big
B
broadcaster
right there.
right there.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, AB.
All right,
Great to see
appreciate you
buddy.
guys.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks.